How do we handle negative reviews and criticism? I started my life as an Army guy, so I have had just about every kind of criticism that you can imagine hurled at me in spades. So I've got a thick skin in regard to criticism. But fundamentally, we're going to run across two different types of criticism. The first criticism is the constructive kind, where we are being given accurate and effective feedback that we can use to grow, develop, and become better. The other not so fun kind of criticism is the ad hominem attack kind of criticism. When we are taking our criticism, we need to understand which is which. I trained jiu-jitsu for a very long time. I have a cohort of practitioners who came up with me. One of the practitioners who came behind me is extremely good, super strong, extremely flexible, smart, capable, tough as nails. But she's got this habit of when you're having a conversation with somebody, she just bombs in, inserts herself into the conversation, has her way with the conversation, says what she needs to say, interrupting everybody, disrupting whatever you're saying, and then she walks off when she gets what she wants. It's super annoying. She's been doing this to me for years. About 6 or 9 months ago, I was talking to someone about a project we're working on. Fellow practitioner comes in and she just starts talking. The other black belt I'm talking to, he looks at me, he's like, did she just jump right in the middle of our conversation and start talking to us like neither one of us existed? And I said, yeah, she's been doing that to me for 8 years. She just jumps in the middle of the conversation and talks, and I normally just ignore her and pick up the conversation where I left off. She looked mortified. I've known her for 8 years. She's got thick skin. But she also hasn't jumped down my throat when I'm talking to people in that entire 9-month period. Inadvertent, but that was constructive criticism, handled harshly because how our relationship works. But she has grown and developed because of that conversation, because of that feedback and the interruption that she got called out on. If you take the perspective of the ad hominem attack and you say, Doug, your eyes are too blue. Doug, your shirt is too white. Doug, your ears are too floppy and you look like Dumbo. Do I really care? Can I change any of that? Maybe I can change my shirt. Do I want to cut my eyes out because you say you don't like the color of my eyes? Not really. Two kind of extreme situations for feedback. Keeping in mind the duration of the relationship and friendship that the three of us had in that first example, as opposed to somebody just coming up with some ad hominem junk to throw at me because they're that 10% of people who just don't like you for whatever reason. And everybody's got those people. Some people are more charming and have lower percentages of people who dislike them. Other people like me probably have more. The perspective on receiving and responding to criticism is critical in how we interact with people. If we mouth off to our football coach in the middle of practice and we humiliate our football coach because we're being a wise guy, how many laps do you expect to run? Is that criticism effective? Not really. When you're in a situation where that same football coach tells you, keep your butt down, keep your shoulders up, keep your head up, drive through them, keep your feet moving. Is that football coach helping you, giving you positive, constructive criticism, making you a better person? The answer is probably they are, because they can see your sloppy technique when you cannot. By the same token, if the football coach says, you're ugly, get off the field, you laugh and keep playing because it's not really serious constructive criticism. It's just somebody being somebody. When you're receiving criticism, it's really critical that we parse it out into two categories: the useless ad hominem junk that just gets spewed around the internet versus the constructive criticism. Example, real life example. Someone reviewed a book. The review done on my book, they mixed my book up with a different book, and they gave a bad review on my book. My response was probably not what it should have been. Don't like the aliens are unbelievable, blah, 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 blah. It was a fairly reasoned review, just for the wrong book. The problem is when you're responding to reviews publicly, everything's public. And just the response that, hey, bud, you're reviewing the wrong book because there's no aliens in this book, the response can come off as a negative ad hominem attack. You got to be careful, especially when you're responding. Most of the time, it's probably not a good idea to respond. On the other hand, were I writing a book that had aliens, and my aliens were unbelievable, their motivations were off, whatever, and this gentleman responded and said, didn't like the aliens because of this, perhaps my response could have been better had I said, that's a very interesting point. Can you please explain more specifically where I went off the rails? Typically, people respond better to a question for information rather than a direct response. If someone is giving a legitimate critique of our material and we ask in response for additional clarification, that usually goes over better than just a quick response, especially if it's a dismissive, potentially dismissive response. The problem with my response saying, hey, there's no aliens in this book, might come off as dismissive. The response was they went back and rewrote the review, and the review turned into, this book has too many 5 stars. I'm giving it a 3-star. They didn't bother changing the star rating. They just gave a lackluster review that says nothing about the book. Not so great. When we're learning from feedback, we'll use a drill sergeant. We'll use a training NCO. When we're in training, we are told what we're going to do. We are shown what we're going to do, and then we do it. Say we're using a radio. We'll sit in class, take notes, be shown how the radio operates by the soldiers in the front. We'll have demonstrations, and we'll have a radio in front of us, and someone will set it up and operate it right in front of us, and we'll learn. Finally, we'll start operating that radio on our own. During the process of operating the radio, it might be an extremely complicated radio because it's a military radio. There's lots of things that have to sync and be connected in order for the radios to connect and work to the system. When you have someone over your shoulder who is more knowledgeable about XYZ pieces and parts in front of you that you're trying to learn, you need to learn from that feedback as you're fiddling through the buttons and trying to learn, because they know better than you. If your English teacher is correcting your grammar, do you listen to her? Yes. If you're an English teacher and you're being corrected by a 4-year-old, do you listen to that level of credibility? You need to be as polite as possible to that 4-year-old and dismiss them quickly and politely. It depends on where the criticism is coming from. One of the issues that we see a lot in today's market for media is the creators seem to have lost the plot. The audience is the customer. And if they're writing something the customer hates because they have a different idea of how some property needs to be developed, and I'm older than the authors are, and I've been in the product and in the universe for longer, and what they write is grossly offensive because it's so far off base for what the property is, and I say, I don't really like how this came out because my criticism may be effective, but because they're trying to do whatever they're trying to do with the product and they believe they know better, we've seen it a lot lately in the last 5-10 years, where media in the form of movies and shows and books have responded negatively to customer reviews. And they've shot themselves in the foot with the audience because they have forgotten that the audience is the boss. The audience can choose to pay them. So when these studios and authors and publishing houses produce material the audience doesn't want, and they're ignoring the customer feedback, what's going to happen to the customer? Am I going to keep spending my hard-earned money on something that obviously doesn't care about the product as much as I do? I'm going to go make my own product, which is why I started writing in the first place. When you're receiving criticism, it's really important that we keep a positive mindset, because the criticism comes when we are at our worst. That sounds a little bit trite, but the criticism is going to arrive when we have missed something. When everything's going, we're only going to be getting positive feedback, right? So if I turn around and I write a craptastic book that the dialogue is squiffy, the characters make no sense, the aliens are horrendous, flat, somebody calling it a craptastic book where the aliens are flat, the dialogue is terrible, and the characters are unbelievable, that's going to hit in the feels because it's true. And ultimately, I need to keep the positive mindset that, hey, I need to do better next time. I think that I am close to 30 books published at this point. Different genres, different pen names, etc. The market is the number one critic. The market and customers who've actually put the money into the product are the only ones who matter. If someone hasn't read our work, does that opinion matter? No. Here's the caveat to that. If someone in our family is giving us a good review because, good boy, Doug, we like you, here's your good review because you're a good son, a good nephew, a good whatever, that review is also likewise no good if they haven't read the book. When we have to keep our positive mindset, it's because we are at our lowest. It's because we have forgotten our movement technique in the rain and the mud, and we don't want to get down there because it's cold and it's gross and it's nasty, and we have to do our correct movement when we're doing advance to an enemy in a raid. We have to do specific things in the army, when we're doing the jiu-jitsu, when we're hurt, when we're tired, when we've got all kinds of big person squishing us. Keeping the technique is ultra critical, or you're going to get hurt. When I have my coach get on top of me for doing something dumb, he is always right because he has more experience, he's better at it, he's more trained, and he's a much higher rank. The man was a black belt for 10 years before I started playing. When you turn around and you have that kind of experience and that kind of credibility, even when you're getting smashed by a dude who's 280 pounds, you need to keep your positive attitude because you're at your lowest. You're getting your teeth kicked in. It's the same with our work. If we publish our first book, we publish our second book, and they're dogs. I mean that in the not so fun way. Everybody loves a good puppy. When you have a book, your first one's probably not going to be that great. We're going to get marginal reviews. Our cover's not going to be where it needs to be. Our dialogue's not going to be where it needs to be. We're going to have issues with our storyline, with our plot. I think I've said on multiple occasions I've got like 3.5 million words worth of content that I have written and will never see the light of day because it just sucks. And that's me reading my own stuff, and I think it sucks. What do you think a reader's going to think? It takes time to master the craft, to build our story, to build our dialogue, to work on the different perspectives. How does Doug write a female? I don't have any experience with that whatsoever. All I know how to do is deal with the people in my life. And some would say I don't even do that very well. But if you have a positive mindset and somebody comes to visit you and says, hey, your book is pretty good, but your female characters are flat. I need to keep my positive mindset and take that, oh, I need to go back and in the next book, I need to go and improve my female characters. I need to work on developing my female characters more. I need to include more female characters in my storytelling because I need to do better. I can do this, that, and the other thing. And the proper response might be to that criticism that, hey, Doug, you're not writing female characters properly, period, on the review. If I say, I don't like your face as a response, that's probably not a really good response on my side. They're going to get upset. Now I've lost a customer because that person reviewing who said that your female character is kind of flat, here's your 3-star, here's your 4-star review, that person's not going to buy the next book because I've insulted them, because I've been a jerk. I turn around and I reframe my response and I say, could you please explain more, period. This is what I was thinking because, where do you think I went off the rails? What could I do better? How can I address this to improve my writing for the next iteration? You can have a positive interaction, and be it publicly or privately or email or however you want to do it. It can help you if you take feedback from fans because they've actually taken the time to review your work and they're invested in you. But you have to be careful, accurate, open, and honest, and extremely polite in the process because you are going to be at your worst. You've been squished, you've had an error pointed out, and that's going to hurt. My grandfather used to say that the truth only hurts the people who are on the wrong side of the truth. Using the writing female characters. Example, if my female character writing is not up to par, I can't just use the Jack Nicholson line where the girl asks him, how do you write women so well? And he says, I think of a man, and then I remove reason and accountability. I'm Doug. I'm not a multi-million-dollar actor who can say that kind of thing and get away with it. When you're presenting your responses to criticism, keep in mind the person on the other end who has spent the time to go through your work and then felt strongly enough about your work that they have invested the emotional capital in their review, be it positive or negative, to offer criticism. The criticism that we can flush is the I don't like you because your hair is too red kind of ad hominem criticism. I'm only talking about the constructive criticism, the reasoned constructive criticism. When you are presented with reasoned constructive criticism, that's an excellent opportunity for us to learn. We see it throughout our lives. We need to handle it positively. We need to take it in from the source, meaning the quality of the source. If there's me and I'm getting squished because I'm out on the mats, and suddenly a 4-stripe black belt with 25 years as a black belt makes a correction, I damn well better listen because he knows better than me. You've got your credibility and the politeness that we need to carry. In our response, we need to remember that people are human. That's where my error in my response all those years ago went off the rails. I just responded, and that was not the best way to do it. In most cases, responding to criticism is probably not the best thing to do. Where we can learn from criticism, potentially, yes. Handling negative reviews might be done by reading other people's negative reviews and criticism before we get down the road and commit to things. Maybe we need to go to other people's work and see what fans like and dislike. I have found that some of the best criticism does not lay in the 1-star reviews or in the glowing 5-star reviews. It dwells in the gray twilight in between. The 2-star and 3-star reviews is where I find a lot of time that the gold lives. The really valuable nuggets seem to live in the 2-star, 3-star, and sometimes 4-star criticism. So if we're really going to benefit from negative reviews, we can start by reading reviews on other people's stuff, try and incorporate those lessons and learn from them before we make the same mistakes. That's the thoughts on handling negative reviews and criticism. I hope you have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your evening.